In this video, we are going to be testing out DaVinci Resolve against the computer you see there in the back, the 370 G15. Back here in my Atlanta home office, been using the Mac as my daily driver, so this is kind of my setup. And let's just get right into the testing. All right, so let me just do a quick methodology. So for those of you unfamiliar, you could export projects and the source files into a folder and just copy them over. So that's what you guys are seeing. These are both loaded on the G15, which is being shown to you through Parsec. So just keep that in mind. The files are 1080p from Sony a6000, and then a QuickTime/OBS recording, which was recorded in 720p. I believe that the 720p version for this particular video is recorded in OBS. So on top of that, since I'm doing some extended testing, I use my M1 Max as a daily driver. I initially recorded this video in OBS and wanted to test out the hardware encoder, but then when I looked at the output of that video, it was really choppy. So I'll put that in the end of this video so you can see that when I do my daily impressions video, or like my long-term review, which will be coming out probably the end of the month after I've used this for a month, OBS hardware encoder is not there, and there are problems with QuickTime. Or there are problems when using the X264, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now, one particular test, if you've been watching what's visually happening on screen, is, from my anecdotal evidence of using this, I haven't seen much playback, stutter, lag, stuff of that nature on either machine. But there was a time when I was editing on the M1 Max that a lot of times when I do multicam, sometimes I would get this like bad stuttering or freezing. I've never actually seen that on the G15. Like there is some acceptable lag and stuff of that nature. I tested here visually, and just I couldn't replicate it from what I've seen previously. But I will just tell you guys that I've never seen like super lag like I've seen it. So that's something for other video reviewers to test, or just to keep in mind. There might be some lag with the multicam on Resolve. So let's just go into kind of just the rendering performance. So the G15 has an RTX 3070, while of course the M1 Max has the 30 core bit option, and there's the M1 Pro and different versions you guys could do. So I've been typically exporting as H.265, and I noticed that compared to Windows versus Mac OS, you can't actually choose between what the automatic settings go to of best and whatnot. So for this particular test, I just rendered at 10,000, I believe, kilobits per second. So that's what we'll be trying to render against. And then, so like I mentioned earlier, because I was doing OBS hardware recording, after I noticed, not just what you're seeing visually on screen is the hardware encoder, it's really choppy. I'm not even like doing much, right? Just doing the hardware encoder, and you can't even, you can't even record at 1440p. But when I start the testing, it's like really slow. So I redo this actually off camera, and I'll show you those results. So just keep that in mind. So right off the bat, when we first start the encoder test, or trying to start this testing, you can see right the M1 Max on the right, it says it's going to take 4 minutes, while the G15 is kind of like at a minute pace and renders pretty smoothly. So obviously I turn off the recording, and then I redo the test, and I get better results on the M1 Max. But I just wanted to show you, for G15 purposes, what the settings are. And then also, like I mentioned, some people need to record screens and need OBS for a specific reason. The hardware encoder is just not there yet with the M1 Max, so that will go in my long-term review. But you can see here, temperatures are pretty smooth, and compared to the G15, the fans actually start kicking up. So now testing it with no screen recording software, nothing to impede it. You can see that these settings actually go much faster, about the same time as the RTX 370, which is about 1 minute pacing. But of course, no fans, temps stay low. So all that good jazz that you've seen probably already on the M1 Max reviews. So that's my take on, just using as a daily driver. I mean, compared to the RTX and the files I'm editing, which are basically 720p files and 1080p files, and exporting 60 FPS for the gaming, you are pretty much not saving that much time, but no fans, stuff of that nature. So if you don't have an RTX machine or laptop and you need to edit videos on the go, the M1 Max is pretty much keeping on pace with the hardware encoder of the NVIDIA. So that's pretty nice to see. Less fans. And then I'm gonna do like more in depth of my thoughts of using this machine. I have a lot of things to think about from the M1 Max perspective. But from a video editing perspective, I don't know if people edit this way. I'm not like a professional. They probably record on their red 8K shit. But some of this B-roll footage that you saw, compared to just using a Sony a6000 and taking out the memory card and all that jazz, which takes a bit of effort, it's so much easier to just use your iPhone and AirDrop on Mac OS. And if you have a DJI gimbal, or you use stabilization with Movie Pro or any third-party app, you get pretty decent B-roll footage. So definitely a plus in the workflow there, in my opinion. So just something to consider. But overall, it's on par. It's on par, right? 1 minute export versus the RTX 370 at 265. That's pretty darn good. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and be on the lookout for, I'm gonna do office tests. I've been using this on Microsoft Teams, WebEx, screen sharing, all that jazz, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.